Everyone gives up big ends from time to time, but it can be extremely frustrating when you start giving up 3, 4, 5, or even more points on a somewhat regular basis. Thankfully, there are a few simple things you can do to cut down on the number of big ends your team gives up at bonspiels and on league nights. Here are 6 reasons why you might be giving up too many big ends in your games. Number 1, you don't hit enough. The easiest way to make sure that rocks don't count for the other team is to make sure that those rocks aren't even in play. Throwing a hit is one of the most defensive moves you can make in most situations, whether that's directly removing a rock in the house or peeling a guard to open up a later hit. Many new skips underestimate just how much peeling a guard can limit the scoring potential for the other team. Sure, you aren't getting rid of anything that's counting, but your opponent will likely have to throw another guard to protect what's still in the house. They may not make that guard perfectly, giving you a better shot at hitting their counter later in the end. But even if they replace it with another perfect guard, they've at least been prevented from making the situation any worse for you. When you're already in a bad spot, peeling guards can help prevent the end from spiraling out of control. Number 2, you don't recognize danger. One of the most important defensive skills you can develop as a skip is recognizing when you're in danger of giving up a big end. This is most important when you don't have the hammer, as strategic errors are more likely to lead to a disastrous end when your opponents have the last rock. The most common situation in which you might fail to recognize danger comes when you have a single rock in the house that is counting, while your opponents have multiple rocks on the wings. Many new skips will continue to try to guard this one rock, no matter how many hammer stones build up around the house. The obvious danger here is, if your opponent ever manages to remove your one rock, they'll instantly create a big end. While guarding your shot stone is the absolutely correct play to make when you must steal, there are other options when you want to play some defense and avoid giving up a big end. Consider throwing a second stone in the rings, either with a hit or with a draw. As long as your 2 rocks are in the house, ideally sitting 1-2 or maybe 1-3, and they can't easily be doubled, your opponents will be limited in how much offense they can create. Sometimes the best guard is sitting second shot. Number 3, you're focused too much on scoring points. This problem comes in 2 different flavors. First, there are skips that want to score whether or not they have the hammer. While it's always great to steal, it's unrealistic to expect to score in most ends when you don't have the hammer. If you always focus on doing everything you can to steal a point, you'll naturally be ignoring what your opponents are doing, and may quickly find yourself in trouble as rocks pile up in the house. It's also possible to be a little too worried about getting your own big ends when you have the hammer. Once you fall behind, it's important to take chances in order to set up ends and give yourself the best chance possible to score 2 or 3 points. But if the game is close and you can see the end going sideways, say the other team has already buried a rock behind multiple center guards, it's time to bail out and try to get your 1 point. Even if you give up a steal of 1, that's rarely a disaster, and you can try to score again in the next end, when things will hopefully go a bit better for your team. Before we move to the second half of the list, I just want to take a moment to talk about Patreon. I've set up a Patreon for Chess on Ice that gives you a chance to support the channel with monthly donations in exchange for some nice benefits. Depending on the level at which you support the channel, you can get everything from seeing your name in the credits, to having influence over what content shows up on this channel, or even getting personalized end reviews from me of your own games. Patrons will also have early access to videos, meaning they get to see them before the general public. So if any of these benefits sound interesting to you, be sure to head on over to patreon.com/chessonice, check out the options, and help support the channel. The more people who do so and help support this channel through Patreon, the bigger and better the content here is going to become. Alright, let's get back to the list. Number 4, you play too aggressively, especially when you have the lead. Sometimes less experienced skips will call shots that actively help the opponent score more points. Of course, they're not doing this on purpose, but when you play aggressive shots like early guards, difficult come-arounds, or downweight hits on buried rocks, the chances you're taking will also allow your opponents to score should your team not capitalize on these risky plays. All of these shots either immediately create opportunities for both teams to score, in the case of guards, or have the potential to miss in ways that leave more rocks in play. If a come-around freeze is just a bit heavy, it will roll off and leave more backing for your opponent. If your hack weight hit crashes on a tight guard, it may leave two guards, or tap the opponent's guard into the house without actually opening up your initial target. This is especially problematic when you have the lead. When you're ahead, it's more important to limit your opponent's potential to score than worry about maximizing your own ends. Play shots that are simpler and more conservative, and which have positive Plan B outcomes, and you'll be more likely to avoid big ends. Number 5. Your team can't execute the shots you are calling. In many cases, your team will give up a big end because, well, the team just missed too many shots. This happens to every team once in a while, but if it seems to be a common problem, you may need to think about what your team does well and play more to their strengths. Players who are strong hitters should be encouraged to remove rocks whenever possible, when you're winning or playing defensively. But if a player struggles to throw hit weight, it may be better to have them draw, even when you want to play more conservatively in general. Splitting the house, drawing down near a clump of rocks, and other shots that suit players with good draw weight will still help you avoid big ends, even if they aren't as purely defensive as peels and hits. Number 6, you're not reading the ice. If your teammates are consistently missing hits, crashing on guards, or failing to get their draws buried, the problem may not be that they're missing the broom. Instead, you might not be doing your job when it comes to reading the ice. Of course, you need to know how much the ice is curling in general, but you should also be on the lookout for unusual features or lines that will impact rocks. Is the sheet dished so that rocks curl hard back to the middle? Is there a low line somewhere on the outside where every rock pretty much goes down the same channel? Is one side running far straighter than the other? If you fail to recognize these issues before your opponent, you may end up giving up a big end that you don't know how to deal with, given the ice conditions. Those are 6 of the biggest reasons why you might be giving up big ends in curling. Do you know of any other reasons why teams give up big ends more often than they should? Leave a comment down below and let me know. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, subscribe, and give my Patreon a look in order to help support Chess on Ice. Thanks, and good curling.